Good morning, everybody. Bro Ed the Red coming to you once again this morning from Louisville, Kentucky, with news and advice, personal advice. Not telling anybody that they should necessarily do what I suggest, but it's my own personal advice I'm going to give later on. Okay, now, you may not be aware of this, but a really big tractor-trailer carrier, not sure exactly what the name is, all I know is it was in Minnesota. The abbreviation for that company is called LNE, closes its doors and shuts down all operations. Now, this is the 5th major truck company closure this year, and we're talking semi-tractor trailer companies that are closing. 5 really big ones this year. Bad news for the food transport industry. As if it's not bad enough that we are going to very soon, within X amount of months, maybe weeks, see major food shortages and immeasurably rising inflation on food. Now we are also faced with the very real probability that we're not only going to see the rising prices, but we will definitely see less being transported, because the trucks are the main means of food transportation in this country. Of course, the railways could pick some of that up, but they're not going to be able to pick up too much of it, I don't really think. Now, the UN has declared worldwide war on freedom of speech, pushing for the same hate speech policy that Google is adopting, meaning that they are trying to make it international law that anyone who says anything in any way negative concerning globalism, worldwide domination of the UN, anything against illegal immigration, quite a few things. Those people, if this becomes successful, are going to become international criminals, subject to, I would say, probably both fines as well as imprisonment by Interpol. Of course, they haven't actually, as far as I know, put that in their proposition just yet, but wouldn't surprise me if they do. Chinese military deploys armored medical vehicles to Germany to train medics and troops for mass casualty incidents and serious disease outbreaks. Why? Why would they be doing that? Same thing is going on here in the U.S. and many other countries, training their own people in their own country for similar things and even the same things. Why? What are they expecting? Well, it doesn't take rocket science, I don't think, to figure out what they're expecting. They come right out here and say what they're expecting. Mass casualty incidents and serious disease outbreaks. Okay. What kind of disease outbreaks, I wonder? Ebola? Anthrax? Bubonic plague? Antibiotic-resistant MRSA? Swine flu? Avian flu? All of the above, perhaps? They know something that we don't. Now, provided that ancient history is accurate, some degree more so than U.S. history, according to ancient history, the bubonic plague was actually launched throughout the world by, guess who? The Chinese. It started in China, and when they went to war with Europe, or warring neighboring factions in Europe that they were trying to control and seize control of, they catapulted bodies of the deceased that were riddled with bubonic plague, because they knew that it was going to decimate the region as it had already decimated China. And it did. But it didn't just decimate Europe, it decimated most of the known world. The only places that I know of that didn't get hit, I would say probably would have been maybe North America, because it didn't really see a particularly great deal of transportation come here from there. It's possible it was, maybe it just wasn't recorded by the Native Americans, but as far as we know, what is now the United States was not affected at that time. This is very interesting. Homeless people in Ventura County, California, move into parks and wooded areas near highways only to leave their belongings and go missing. Okay, why are they leaving their belongings and going missing? Good question. I would say there definitely is something very nefarious sounding going on here. Could it be the UN and their depopulation agenda? I think a variable could be. We have known, those of us who have kept up, that for several years now, there have been quite a few cities, and the number, I think, is probably on the rise, and may be on the decline. It's hard to tell. It probably depends, to be honest with you, as to whether those cities are cities with a conservative or a liberal mayor. Yeah, if they have, it just makes sense. If they have a conservative mayor, then some of these cities, possibly more of them, are more than likely continuing to make homelessness illegal. Just makes sense. I'm sorry that they would be the ones that would do that. Not necessarily, though. I'm not 100% sure on that. I'm just saying it makes sense. Where liberals, on the other hand, their mayors, more than likely would not do that because, I feel for homeless people as much as anybody else, but I'm not the bleeding heart liberal type that, I'm sure you guys have noticed that. I'm just not. I'm very conservative, even as what most people would consider to be a liberal. My heart goes out to homeless people who are in this situation for whatever the reason. Whether it's the very unwise choice of getting too deeply involved in drugs, not being able to live according to, accept life on life's terms, and, hiding away in a bottle all day, every day. If they, had some sort of a serious financial problem that caused them to lose their home, whatever the reason. I feel for these people. I do. Even the ones that constantly have their hands out all the time, every single day, all throughout the day, begging. It's hard not to feel sorry for people because they're in such a sad state of affairs. But, at the same time, We all put ourselves, for the most part, in the situations that we're in, and for the most part, we are the only one that can get ourselves out. And when the time comes, which I personally have had quite a few times, incidents, situations come up in my life in the past where I could not get myself out of a situation at all. I had to rely solely and completely on God Almighty to get me out of it, or to, at least if nothing else, guide and direct me on what I needed to do on my end to make that happen. And He has always been there to do both. Whichever I needed at the moment, He's always been there to show me either what I needed to do on my end, or sometimes even get me out of it altogether. And quite frankly, if these people would just put their trust and faith in Him, He would do the same thing for them. That's just all there is to it. I'm no different, no better than anybody else. I was homeless at one point in my life as well. Lived in Providence, Rhode Island, and saw some very seriously hard times on my end. Wound up with hepatitis and just, very difficult times. I'll go into that sometime. But, the main point that I want to make is we've got four global factions, really. Mainly. You got the United States. I don't care what anybody says, our leaders want to rule the world. Russia wants to rule the world. China wants to rule the world, and they want to start with us. Their plan is by 2038 to have overthrown the U.S. government and taken over. And I agree with Murph. I do. Knowing that that's their plan, why would all these ghost cities that they have built in China that they're not using for the Chinese people, knowing that their plan is to overthrow the American government, take over the country, why would they not have built those to put us in? Or even us and people from other countries? I think they did. I really do believe that's why they built them. Otherwise, they would have Chinese people living in them. It's not as if they don't need to be. Do you realize how many Chinese people, single men, many of them, living in hostels, where the only space that they have to live is just a bed, a cot, and sharing a restroom, cooking facilities, everything, with countless other men. That's not even including mothers or fathers with a child or more than one child living in conditions that you cannot even begin to imagine. Third world conditions in a first world country. And paying hundreds of dollars a month for that. But knowing that they have so many people in their own country living this way, they have all these huge ghost cities capable of housing millions of people, housing no one. That makes absolutely no sense at all. None. Unless they're saving them for us and people from other countries, as they have built cities like exactly replicas of New York, Paris, etc. Maybe they're going to put French people in the one that looks like Paris, Americans in the one that looks like New York, etc. I think maybe that might be what they're planning. Then you've got the UN, who wants to bring down all of these through economic means, as well as disease and food and water shortage, or food shortages and water contamination. That's their goal. They've made that very clear if you take a good look at such things as Agenda 21, Agenda 2030, and Agenda 2050. And going into something a little closer to home, a little closer to right now, that is a little ways off. Hopefully, it's going to be, if it does actually happen, 2038. Makes me kind of wonder, however, who's going to be in office by 2030 is going to actually help them, make all this happen. Interesting. Something to think about. Something to be looking for. Watching. But getting back to home, closer to this current time, when the global market does go down, and it affects, global, I said that again. Not everybody believes that it is global, so as far as the shape and what have you. Worldwide market goes down and affects everyone in the world, every nation, every citizen of every country, every state. The only real money, let's just say it the way it is, the only real money is going to be such things as precious stones, semi-precious stones of gem quality, metals, semi-precious metals like copper. I do believe personally, it's just my own personal feeling, that copper will increase in value. Maybe not particularly a lot, but I do believe that with silver and gold, copper's value will also increase. It's always been valuable to some degree, or it wouldn't have always been used as currency. Whether it's the least valuable of currencies or not, it's still always been used alongside of silver and gold. So, perhaps semi-precious stones are becoming the new copper. And perhaps copper may become the new poor man's silver, so to speak, and silver be the poor man's gold. Perhaps. It's just a theory. I'm just saying, if you can't, or you feel for whatever the reason that you can't afford to buy silver, invest in things that are of somewhat lesser value that you can afford, that would still be valuable in a worldwide economic collapse situation, that would more than likely increase it in value in that situation, just like everything else. Again, people are always going to like to adorn themselves. They're always going to like to wear something that makes them feel a little more special, like they look a little bit better, what have you. It's something that's always going to be there. It's always been there, it's always going to be there. These things will be more valuable. They'll be things that can be used for bartering, trading goods, what have you. Copper will be as well, no doubt in my mind, especially if it's something shiny, new, and pretty. It does corrode over time, that's true. Buy some Tarnex. Buy, as many bottles of it as you can. Clean it on a regular basis in that set of circumstances when it actually happens, and keep it looking good. It won't tarnish. At least it'll take longer to tarnish anyway, and then corrode. At any rate, till next time, prep. And I'm sorry, but I have to say, buying these stones, buying copper, and if possible, buying silver. Most people can't afford to buy gold, so I wouldn't even try that unless you really just had the money to do it. It's too expensive. $400 or $500 for a quarter ounce. I can't afford it. But I can afford to get some silver. I can afford to buy copper. I can afford to continue buying semi-precious stones. I believe most people can do that. It's affordable enough that most people can do it. Wish.com is a great place for semi-precious stones. You can get them really cheap, like $1 for one stone. Sometimes cheaper. Sometimes you can get them for free and you don't have to pay anything but the shipping. I suggest it strongly. Silver.com is a great place to get both copper and silver coins. Pure copper and silver coins. Pure is the main term here. Pure copper is going to be worth more than impure copper. pure silver is worth more than impure silver, as same thing with gold. This really needs to be part of everyone's prepping repertoire, so to speak. Non-perishable food, water, body and oral hygiene supplies, first aid, weapons, ammo, need all of that. Have a Bible. I would suggest having the Apocrypha as a companion to the Bible. Now, be with God, be in prayer, be listening for His guidance and His direction. He will give it. Acknowledge Him in everything that we do, and He will direct our paths. Till next time, be safe, be at peace, be prepared. Roed the Red, signing out.